Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rise Coaching Transformational Speaker playlist, where we try and help you become a better communicator, someone who can walk into a room, address a subject, and transform the audience in any time frame of your choosing. Today, I've got 5 or 6 minutes that I hope will transform your ability to connect, particularly in the video conferencing space. So yes, we're focusing on Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, all those platforms you use professionally and perhaps even personally in your communities these days to actually connect with other people and maybe educate them or update them on the latest happenings in the workplace, the project management. There are so many different applications, of course, for video conferencing. It's a really amazing tool that's allowed us to connect across greater distances in workplaces in a more meaningful way. However, it's also reduced the amount of contact we get with people in the room. And not many people have become experts yet in this particular type of communication. So those of us who market perhaps using video, we probably have an advantage. And those of us who have spoke and educated it a lot in the video format, down the Zoom tube, as I like to call it, in the last couple of years, again, we probably have an advantage. But you don't see many people waxing lyrical on the special skill that is talking, speaking, presenting, delivering through Zoom. Now, it's a challenging environment. So I'm trying to give you 5 or 6 top tips before the end of December that can really bring you into 2024 with a little bit more of a level up or a little bit of a leveling up of your Zoom deliveries. Simple stuff, technical, practical, but easy to implement and therefore easy to improve your game. So when you're on Zoom, one of the best friends you've got is the chat box. Now, you'll hear this tip out there everywhere, but I've got a few little psychological plays that you might be able to incorporate in your use of the chat box that will make you more effective and therefore more able to integrate your audience, get them to participate in a way that builds momentum over time and thus leaves them feeling part of the experience. And that's important. Whenever you're thinking about any kind of delivery, regardless of the medium, regardless of the context, regardless of the room, you need to think about the experience of the end user and the people you are connecting with and hopefully connecting to one another. So today, though, we're really going to focus on this video conferencing skill, and we're going to give you my top tip. This is my favorite way to engage an audience in Zoom, and everybody uses it, but you could maybe use it a little bit more effectively, and that is the chat box. So how do I like to do this, and what do I think you need to think about? A strategy you can deploy, if you will, that is going to improve people's willingness to basically open up in the Zoom room and just to build up the trust essentially, so that you get them engaging with the session perhaps at a higher level than you might otherwise. So here's a secret. Start early. In fact, there's more than one secret, but number one, start early. So in the first 2 to 3 minutes of your presentation, you need to get people to answer in some sort of semi-closed question initially. So what you want to do is you want to get them agreeing with you early in the process. This creates a connection, a point of resonance with your audience. So you need to find ways of asking questions that are really quite simple in that they're yes, no, or maybe answers, and you can give them framed answers, and you want to try and get them to lean towards a yes that you're creating for yourself. So something really simple. So an example might be, I recently did a stress is enhancing workshop. And one of the first questions I asked, in fact, the first question I asked for this purpose was simply, who here has to deal with stress? Obviously, the whole room put their hand up, and that's why I asked for hands up. And everyone did. Everyone put their hand up. I then followed up with the next question. Who here has dealt with stress specifically in the last fortnight? I'm immediately getting engagement. This would work fantastically down the Zoom tube because everybody is going to answer that question because they want to, because stress is something we need to express about, something that we've all got a certain amount of tension that will build up unless we're really active and proactive and really effective at eliminating our stress and expressing it, which most people have still got some residual stress and residual and latent emotion that will relate to the stresses they've experienced in recent weeks. Very few people process out all of that in a 2-week time frame, right? So This is such a great way to start that particular workshop, of course, but those kind of questions that you know people are going to want to express, they're really, really useful because you're kind of negotiating with the audience, but you're playing to their natural proclivity to express themselves about certain things more than others. So that's what we can start with. Something that gets them on the board early, and it starts the engagement on a mass scale. And what that does is it transforms that chat box into an open space rather than a restricted and closed space that otherwise is reserved for the confident or the out and out sort of gobby, as we like to call it in England, people who just can't wait to express themselves. Most people are great, but of course, we want to try and at least encapsulate some audience members who are less likely to come forward initially. So then we want to build the momentum. So what we don't want to do is ask that straightforward question that's got a little bit of a closed frame and then move to a highly open question in the next question we're going to drop for our chat box interaction. And it'd be super complicated, super open, and controversial or personal or just dangerous, you could say. It's not, we don't want to put our audience in a state of fear when they answer. Now, if we can get to 45 minutes and we've done a really great presentation, we might be able to ask some questions that relate to vulnerability, but you will need to position your talk incredibly well to achieve that, your webinar, your presentation, your delivery. However, what we can do to get there, if we want to get there, we want that kind of interaction, which is going to be really powerful because you're going to deliver emotion to the room, which is going to charge up the listener, and that's going to mean they're going to take away more information. What we want to do is build momentum. So we want to increase the complexity and the depth of the question and perhaps the danger that could be attached to it. We don't need to aim for danger, but some questions naturally create a slight response, a slight apprehension to respond. Therefore, they're what I call danger questions. And to ask those, we really need to work towards with them, and we probably need to negotiate. So that is to say that if you ask some semi-vulnerable questions halfway through your momentum building process, you might want to give some vulnerable shares off the back of them to negotiate with the audience and create a layer of reciprocation that will ultimately result in a better exchange in this transmit-receive on a vulnerable level, perhaps, sort of duel that you've got going on. Not duel, that's not the right word at all. Exchange. You want this exchange to be balanced. In fact, the only way it's going to work is if you try and create something balanced. So that's my top tip on Zoom. Ask questions early and ask them regularly and build up their complexity and their danger. But don't be afraid of the latter two elements, complexity and danger, because the reason being is this is a yardstick for your success as well in terms of the integration and the level of trust that you've built up with the audience. If you can be asking more complex questions and put people in a space of vulnerability upon answering, then you've probably done a really great job of building trust. So this is something you can play with, something you can experiment with. It's a pretty advanced technique, I'll grant you, but I guarantee you, the more effectively you use that chat box, the more effectively you will present on Zoom. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Chris White, your transformational speaker coach and transformational speaker here in New Zealand and wherever they'll have me. And I'm really on a mission to transform 1,000 Kiwis in the workplace in terms of their own stress management and to reach 500 people on their speaking skill and confidence in the next about 13 months at this point, but that will drop by the time you probably see these videos. So get behind me, like, comment, tell us what you think of the videos. Tell us what you need from someone who's trying to help you become a better communicator and a better speaker, and someone who can really attract audiences in and get them to work together to get to those objectives that you've set them on the outset of your delivery. If that sounds like a really useful tool for you, you know where to find me, chris@risewellness.co.nz. Don't be shy. Please, let's get a conversation going. It's time to become a transformational speaker.